The first 3 weeks of the NWSL season 2024 have been underway. We have shock surprises. Kansas City and Chicago, frankly, are at the top of the table. They finished 2023 very, very bottom of the table. They've turned it around. Both of those squads undefeated. The only two teams that have picked up points in every single game so far, including a win, not just draws. And they are at the top of the table. So I want to know from you, Sandra, one word to describe the first 3 weeks of the NWSL season.
It's so hard. I was like, "What if I drop, like, multiple one word?"
Same,
No,
same.
but if I listen, I've been in my headphones, I've had Beyonce nonstop, so I'm just gonna go with rowdy in honor of Cowboy Carter. Like, NWSL first 3 weeks for me has been pretty rowdy, and I'm here for it.
I like it. So rowdy. What's been like the most rowdy part about it? Like why'd you go with rowdy? Because you had so many words. What happened to whittle it down to just rowdy?
I gotta throw it back to opening weekend, if I'm being honest. Like, look, I think you and I and anyone who has been hanging around these NWSL streets has known that the chaos meter can always go off, right? But the fact that we got it opening weekend, we had what was it? It ended up being a 9 goal score line, between Portland in Kansas City, and it was almost like, "Hee hee, is this gonna set the tone for the opening weekend?" And while we were, like, hee-heeing about that, it turns out it was true. Like, the remaining game, also equally popped off. So, I like that that has really, really kind of been, like week 1 was, like, really the scene setter, and we kinda haven't, taken a dip in some of the chaos meter or the rowdiness factor of some of these
Yeah.
teams. I would even argue that I'm sure we're gonna talk a little bit about the extra stoppage time and the VAR process, but that has contributed to some of these wild endings as well.
Rowdy, I like it. There
Mhm.
was a disclaimer that I didn't say to you or to anyone listening to this that we couldn't use chaos as our one word because that's just like
Gotta take it out, gotta
classic.
take it out.
Yeah, every season, every week of the NWSL. So, my word, which I have to be honest, I'm already breaking the rules of this because it's not one word. But in fairness of it being March Madness and in basketball they call it overtime, we're going to use extra time as my quote one word to describe these first 3 weeks because extra time has been so paramount in every single one of these games. And it does stem from VAR and having really long reviews, but there have been 9 goals in extra time, whether it's first half extra time or second half extra time, 4 of them game changing, meaning that it caused a win, it caused a draw in a game, and there was also one red card that happened in the extra time. Remember that to
Oh
Aubrey
my
Kingsbury that
goodness.
ultimately got called back for the
Ugh,
Washington Spirit? So
what a
that's
time.
that's my one word to describe these first few weeks because there has been so much, and frankly, extra time change it and how long you're playing for, right? You think you're playing a 90-minute game and it sometimes it can extend to be 120 in some instances, depending on how much added time you have added on. So it's a lot and it's changed a lot of these games. Do you like my words, Sandra?
I love your word. I love that it's also attached to March Madness a little bit in that sense. Look, we would often talk about other sports when we would come onto our live segments of A3 as well. So I love that you're kind of like still throwing it back old school a little bit and kind of making the basketball tournament references. But I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
Like, how could we not talk about that extra layer, with these games coming out of week 3? I would argue that some of the games that saw a lot of extra time was the reason why we got some of the results that we did, whether it
Yeah.
was, Sam Coffey coming through for Portland at home, Houston Dash, getting their, first win out of week 3. And it's we look at the timestamps of some of these moments that were the deciding factors, and it's like 98 plus 8 or 98 plus 10. And it's just like we only get these moments if there's still that extra chunk of extra
Exactly.
time. But it in that sense, Lisa, that's where it feels kind of preseason-y maybe. Like,
Yeah.
it's early days for everybody, and maybe that also includes, officials as well.
Yeah, exactly. And even, I mean, yeah, we're talking 90 plus 8, but also 45 plus 4. The
Yep.
stoppage time at the end of the first half has also been pretty lengthy. It's interesting. For everyone joining us in the chat, we see you, we hear you. Thank you. Paul Brown, giving a shout out to you because love that you all make up the rules as we go along. So attacking third. Yeah, it is. We do get to make up the rules. And that's why it's so much fun here. Okay, so first 3 weeks, Sandra, we have our 2 words. Yours is rowdy, mine is a fake 2 words, extra time. But what has been the biggest surprise over these first 3 weeks, whether it's a certain team or a certain player or how someone has kind of shocked you in these early weeks? What's your NWSL early surprise?
Look, I'm gonna just be real, and I have to shout out to the Midwest Queens. I think we need to shine a little bit of light for Kansas City Current and Chicago Red Stars as well. These were 2 teams in 2023 that struggled. They finished bottom of the table, 11 and 12 respectively. And what were they going to look like in 2024, especially with some of the different dynamics for both teams? Current and wanting to go out there and find a new head coach. Same with Chicago. Some of these similar parallels, but also very different different areas in which they didn't have to kind of tackle. Like there's already an ownership in place with Kansas City that are putting in investment and resources. In Chicago, we're navigating in this new era of a new ownership group. So some similarities, some differences. What was everything that was happening outside of
Yeah.
the pitch? So what was it going to all look like? How was it all going to come together on the pitch? And so I love that these 2 teams are sitting top of the table to start the opening 3 weeks, kind of taking some of those storylines and taking some of those narratives around their teams and just absolutely shattering them. Whether it's for Kansas City Current that they were going to need to have time to build up. Vlatko Andonovski was going to need a little bit of time to get reingrained in NWSL landscape, or for Chicago, who's like, they also are building something new. What is Mel Pugh going to look like, or Mel Swanson going to look like in her return from a lengthy injury
How many
absence?
times are we going to do that this year? We should start a tally. Malpew, Malsauce.
Mel Pugh, Mel Swanson. Yeah, let's just check it out. Let's just check that off the list right now. But I'm here for it. I'm here for Midwest dominance. I love it. I love it here this 3 weeks. Stop the count. Kansas City and Chicago Red Stars.
I mean, I like it, Sandra. And for those who have not listened to just Sandra and I ever do an episode, we have worked together since July of 2021, pretty much daily. And we tend to think alike a lot without planning it. So we didn't talk about anything before this. My greatest surprise is also in the Midwest, and it's also Kansas City. I'm diving deeper into Kansas City instead of just, hey, they're undefeated at the top of the table. Because when you look at the roster makeup of Kansas City, there's no surprise that they know how to score goals. And the fact that they have 11 goals in 3 weeks with 9 different goal scorers is not at all shocking when you look at Bia Zanerato, Chawinga, Dabinia, who, although she's been injured the last 2 weeks, she contributed to about 3 goals in the first 30 minutes of week 1. Vanessa DiBernardo, they've done so well, but that's not surprising to me. What's shocking to me is that Kansas City isn't more defensive and that the Current have conceded 7 goals
Big.
in 3 matches. And knowing Vlatko Andonovski and his time previously in the NWSL in Kansas City, no matter where he was, even with the United States women's national team, he wants to be defensively organized and defensively sound. He doesn't want to concede goals. He wants to be solid in the back. He wants to build his team and his foundation up starting with defense, and that's not what we're seeing from this Kansas
Yeah.
City side. So I am shocked that they have conceded as many goals as they have. And I don't think that we're going to see that moving forward as well. Like it's been fun to kind of joke and talk about Kansas City as a side that is gonna it's gonna concede goals, but hey, they're gonna score more than you. And it's incredibly entertaining. I just don't foresee that being the case in week 6, week 10, week
It's
11,
not
week 12.
not sustainable to live that kind of life in NWSL.
It is not at all sustainable, and that's not how Vlatko Andonovski wants to play. He wants to be solid in the back and use the defensive foundation to build on their attack. And I think when you look at kind of who's been in the back line, they've had some injuries and they've had players on minute restrictions. So Andonovski hasn't been able to have a solid back five, including the back four and the goalkeeper, even the defensive six. They've just had a lot of rotation, which makes it a little bit harder to keep shutouts. So in that sense, yeah, why don't we just go ahead and score a bunch of goals?
It's fun in the early days to do that when you kind of, are still given a little bit of grace, I think, with um having the ability to tinker with some things, make adjustments. And while the goal scoring has been fun, and obviously picking up the 3 points and getting the win is always fun, what we've been hearing out of these post games is that they're still disappointed to not walk away with clean sheets, that they want to lock that up, that they want to make sure that they are delivering in both halves here. So we'll see how it looks in weeks, 4, 5, and 6.
And they're not even close, frankly, to a shutout. The closest they got was against San Diego, only
Yeah.
conceding 1 goal, but in that match, they conceded first. They went down 1-0. So it's not, I don't know. They definitely have, Kansas City has some things that they need to work on defensively in order to be a little bit more sound and make teams work a little harder to get goals and score it against Kansas City.